My guest is a former mechanic turned entrepreneur and tech CEO. He escaped communism in the Soviet Union at a young age by coming to the U.S., where he has spent years working in the automotive industry. His work has been featured on television, and now he's here on my humble radio show to talk about his latest endeavor, the Parts Pass app. Stan Mirzayev, welcome to Automotive ADHD.
Quite the intro. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate your time and being here.
Absolutely. I love having you here. We've got a lot to talk about aside from our shared passion for cars. Stan, real quick, before we talk about the Parts Pass app and some of the things that you're working on, give me some of your backstory. Where do you come from and how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for giving me the platform to talk about my past. Talk about an emotional roller coaster, not for myself, but for my parents especially. Like you mentioned, we escaped communism when the Soviet Union started falling apart in 1987, I would say, slowly but surely. But my parents managed to leave and never look back in 1990. My parents didn't know a word of English, but they knew that they wanted to set up their kids to have a successful life moving forward. So with the clothes on their back and just a couple of suitcases, they set sail to America. Keep in mind that my father was a pretty well-established entrepreneur himself early on, and unfortunately he wasn't able to take any of the proceeds with him to the States. So with the clothing on their back and a couple luggages and just $400 in his pocket, my mom and my dad and my sister and I made it to the U.S., and it's been an incredible ride thus far.
Wow. And I imagine, so you spent a lot of your life, though, growing up here in the United States, of course, but with those family ties and, kind of going back to that and coming from that, too. It's that's one of the great things I love about the United States. You can come from anywhere and make a living for yourself here and do really cool stuff. So how has that led into what's some of the stuff that you've done, leading up to working in the automotive industry and now, of course, becoming a tech CEO?
Yeah, my father went straight into the workforce because he had to be a provider. Talk about selflessness, right? My dad put his own personal feelings aside and knowing that he had to go out there and provide for his family. He found himself in the automotive industry working at a taxi cab in Brooklyn, New York. So we immigrated straight to New York City, Queens, New York to be exact. And my father found a job working late nights at the local taxi garage, which he was getting paid pennies on the dollar because unfortunately, people take advantage of people when they see them in need. So the first shop that he worked at, he was being paid probably about $33 a day. And at the time, you can't really make anything out of it, let's be honest here. But through his experiences, he knew that he had to set himself up and he wanted to own his own business. It took him about 6 years to bring in the funds, save enough, and start his own little garage in Queens, New York. My mother raised the kids and went to school as well. So she got to experience the academics that the U.S. offers. And she was very much a scholar. So for her, education was the North Star. So for her, everything rotated around making sure that her kids got a good education. Whereas my father just went into the workforce. Through high school, actually, my father and I started working together. I was very resistant in working at the family business just because it was dirty, it was loud, it was just gruesome, especially when you have those weather conditions that just make it very unbearable at certain times. But I knew that I wanted to be close to my dad. I knew that I wanted to be side by side with him because I knew that he put his life aside to make it for his kids. And through high school, I gained an appreciation for the automotive industry. And never looked back. I've dabbled in different industries as well, thinking about what else I could do. But the automotive industry has always been very near and dear to me.
Wow, that is fantastic, and that's a great way to get into it as well. So coming from working at your dad's shop, working at the family business, how'd you transition from that to becoming a tech CEO, starting up a great parts app? And you were telling me off air too last time we chatted about some other stuff that you've done even before this app. How did you make that transition?
Yeah, so working side by side with my father, I got to see firsthand the struggles that he would have to go through, specifically when it came to searching replacement parts. So about 6 years ago, I kind of started putting a business plan together of how would I solve this issue. And at the time, mobile apps were just growing and growing very quickly. So we kind of had that going for us. We didn't have to reinvent the wheel. So I got together with a software developer, and I said, here's the issue that mechanics are facing. Let's put the numbers together and see how much time is actually wasted procuring parts at a small to medium size auto repair shop. And we did the calculations, and it was over $45,000 a year that I would just spend behind the table calling multiple suppliers to find out who has the part, how much does it cost, what the warranty is, and of course the availability. Right.
Wow.
So it was a huge bottleneck. It was a huge problem that I knew that I can create a solution around. So we started kind of putting the plan together, and Parts Detect was born. And it's about 6 years now. And what Parts Detect did is that we teamed up with national parts suppliers, the brick and mortars, the local parts suppliers, the AutoZones of the world, for example. And we have 5 different suppliers that believe in our mission, believe in the value that we bring them, and the value that we bring the installers, the mechanic shops, because we actually drive traffic to our suppliers, and we also alleviate a lot of that bottleneck for our end users, who are the mechanics. And my team and I found success early on there. And slowly but surely, we started really growing Parts Detect. And early 2022, last year, a light bulb went off, and I started thinking about the do-it-yourselfers, the opportunity that we have there that we're not just tapping into, right? Because I would go to these local parts suppliers and kind of stand on the sideline and watch that interaction that a customer would go through with that parts suppliers. And it was just really upsetting, honestly, because there's so many different variables that you can't control. You have to know the lingo. You have to know the car that you're working on. You have to wait to be called on. You have to connect with somebody on the other end. And if they're having a bad day, they just put that on you, right? So a bulb went off, and I said, we need to create a simple way for the everyday person, the average do-it-yourselfer, an opportunity to use an app that is just cutting edge. We provide them value by giving them quality parts at severe discounts, wholesale pricing, and we give it to them. We deliver actually within 48 hours.
Wow, that's really cool. That's for me, I'm definitely in that kind of DIYer category, and I've taken that to the top of being as much of a hobby as I can. But I've run into a lot of those same issues. A lot of times you go to whatever local parts store it is, and they might have a thermostat for a small block Chevy, a 350, but it depends. If you got something else a little weirder, a little different, they go, well, that's on back order. Or, well, we gotta get one shipped, and it comes from wherever. It's probably going to be a week or so. And I've had even less luck, honestly, at the car dealerships too. A lot of the things I work on and a lot of things my listeners work on are a little too old for that. They're new enough that you can still find parts, but the dealership, you go there and they kind of just look at you funny when you ask for whatever part it is that you need. So I can see there's tons of logistical work that goes into making an app like this work. Obviously, you have that network from your Parts Detect app. You've got all the distributors, but tell me about what it takes to set this up. How do you actually become direct to consumer with this?
Yeah, that's the challenge of its own. So we kind of put together a persona of the individuals that we're targeting. So we create a customer persona, and that's one side of it. But the completely opposite of things is the back end infrastructure, and that's the hardest part, right? There's so many different vehicles and so many moving parts and so many SKU numbers. We wanted to make sure that we, again, have enough inventory that we can procure that process of ordering parts, that we can simplify that ordering process by alleviating that search process of the car itself. So what we did is we took artificial intelligence, and this is one of the ways that a user can select the vehicle. The artificial intelligence is pretty neat. It allows a user to take a picture of the back of their car or even the front of their car, and using the dimensions of the vehicle, that AI will help decode that vehicle. So it'll figure out the make and model. Another option that we just launched actually last week is that a user can select from a traditional drop down. So you can go into it, you can select year, make, model, engine size. So we're giving options to start the process of looking for car parts. And also, what separates us is that we have all quality name brand parts. All of our suppliers are either in Europe, or the brands, I should say, European parts, Japanese parts, very few, if any, actual Chinese-based parts. We have 27 distribution sites throughout the country, making sure that we can get those parts to our customers very quickly. We have over 2 million SKU numbers in stock, making sure that we have the inventory to actually fulfill those orders. And we have an incredible app that is completely free to use as well.
That's fantastic. And I was playing around with the app a little bit before the show here. I downloaded it and I was poking around with it. And I was amazed, too, that right when you take a picture of the back of your car, it picks up the license plate immediately, which I thought was really cool. And obviously, I assume from the license plate, you're able to get the VIN and everything there and, and figure out exactly what you need for your car. And I see that being useful, too, for not just the hobbyist DIYer, but obviously for the just the car owner, perhaps someone who's not familiar with this world of working on cars as a mechanic or a hobbyist, but just wants to keep their car on the road. Money's a little tighter these days, and they might be more willing to take up something themselves. When something like your app is a great way for them to find what they need. It kind of goes back to what you were saying about going to the parts stores. You got to kind of know what the part is. You got to know what to tell the guy at the counter. You got to hope that he actually knows what part you're talking about too, to be able to look it up correctly. So I see a lot of value in that. And I think it's definitely going to be good for, again, anyone, hobbyists to your average owner.
Yeah, what we're seeing is more and more people are holding on to their vehicles. For example, the average vehicle that's on the road now is just over 13 years old with 130,000 miles. And what COVID taught us is that you can't really rely on new vehicles. What we are seeing also statistically showing that new car purchases are decreasing, leases are decreasing as well. So people are really holding on to their cars. And with a platform like YouTube, you really get that really cool detailed tutorial of how to do certain things, certain repairs, certain maintenances that you can kind of do on your own. So that kind of circles back to the do-it-yourselfer, right? So the do-it-yourselfer industry, the market itself is growing on an annual basis. But what's interesting is now we have a new category that's growing as well, and it's called the do-it-for-me. So people are also going out there sourcing the parts themselves and having a local repair shop or even a mobile mechanic install that part for them. And the value there is that you're getting a quality part from our supply chain that an installer can install without having any kind of modifications done to it. Because a lot of these Chinese-based companies is that they take a model, a molding, and replicate it, but you can't really trust them because the fact is the fitment is not always there, or the temperature, for example, just like you said, the thermostat is not precise. So we focus on quality name brand parts.
For sure. That's always good to focus on. I think, in my personal experience, I've had issues personally with Chinese parts that came from, name brand local auto parts stores too, is the thing. I mean, the stuff you're getting off of the counter, at an auto parts store, in fact, I would argue in some ways, less about that part, less about the quality of it. Where did it come from? Does it actually, you get the little tag, meets OE specifications, but does it really? And so I think being able to do what you're doing, being direct to consumer, coming from the supplier, a lot of times these are the suppliers as well who supply the OEMs, supply the manufacturer. Having that, I think is definitely a benefit. I've had personally issues with CV shafts, for instance, CV axles and things like that came from Chinese suppliers that I bought at reputable stores of all things. So I think that's really good. Now, again, my guest is Stan Mirzayev. The app is Parts Pass. You can find it free on the Apple App Store, and you can also follow Stan on Instagram at Stan_founder. Now, how does this also help? You talked about how this kind of tied into the do it for me type of crowd. How does this tie into the small business owner, the independent mechanic, the, mobile technician? How is this useful for them on a more professional level?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a really good question. There's over 335 registered automotive facilities, 335,000, I should say, 335,000 repair shops across the country. And those are big box brands, enterprise level repair shops as well. But what's interesting is that the small independent garages that are off the highway somewhere, and they're not close to any parts suppliers. They really have to drive maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours out of their way to go to the local parts suppliers. And it's not guaranteed that they have that part there as well. So using our platform, again, you can be a do-it-yourself, or you can even be a business owner. So we've seen an influx in downloads and transactions from really small, like under two garages, independent shop owners, quote unquote, mom and pops, who also like the process of being able to order a part directly from your phone and have it shipped same day and delivered within 48 hours. So there's something really valuable there because, again, the value of the part, the price point, and that shipping, we can get it into the most rural areas or along the coastline as well.
Right, right. That's really cool. Being able to have that reach, that's something that you can't necessarily get with a traditional brick and mortar parts supplier and things like that. And I think that's really, really utilizing the infrastructure we have now with the internet and communications and things like that, and being able to find stuff that is higher quality, that is, from reputable suppliers as opposed to going on eBay. I mean, I've had a terrible experience with eBay parts personally, but that said,
me too.
yeah. Now, you've spent years working in the automotive industry, and how have you seen things change? How have you seen things change with technology, be it in-car technology versus also maintaining said cars, but also on the manufacturer side of things?
Yeah, I've seen quite the change over the past, let's say, 10 years or so. So people are within the 5 years, I would say people are getting a little bit more hesitant on just handing the keys over and having somebody go through their car and say, you need A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Here's the price ticket for you. So people are getting a little bit smarter and they're shopping around and shopping for specific parts. And they'll do that right in front of me, right? So I encourage it. And if that's something that they want to do, I'm perfectly okay with it, especially if I can't price match. It's one of those things that I said, okay, absolutely. If you can bring the part, I'll just charge it for labor. So it's 100% profit for us, right? People are also bringing their own oil and their filters and brake pads and brake rotors. So that kind of has shifted, and that's including in that do it for me scenario that I've spoke about earlier. Electric vehicles have a huge presence. Unfortunately, we don't work on them. You have to be a specific kind of mechanic or have the specific machines and computers to diagnose and repair certain vehicles. So I think people are going to be a little bit more inclined with diagnostic machines and computers because you can see quite an extensive catalog on Amazon or eBay where you can buy a computer and reset certain lights or diagnose your own vehicle. So people are kind of diagnosing, repairing, and every now and then they'll call in for advice. And, being a neighborhood shop, I promote that. I encourage it. I want to help people that are in the community because it gives me an opportunity to connect, gives me an opportunity to give a first impression that we're here to help. And it also gives me an opportunity to service their vehicle down the line. If it's something that they need help with, then they know that they can rely on me and my services to provide them and make sure that their vehicle is safe on the road.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I think, mechanics, you find sometimes with smaller independent shops, you find guys they've been the family mechanic, right? Mom and dad got their car, serviced there years ago, and now the kids are driving, and well, now he's working on the kids' car too, and maybe they have kids one day, and you have these kind of, when you build relationships like that, obviously, and from a business standpoint, that's good as well. But, you create these, sometimes lifelong relationships with customers who trust you as a mechanic. And obviously having something like being able to find the right parts, being able to do the right thing as well, and saying, well, you could buy that part off of eBay, but this one, you might want to look at this because this is better quality, or I've used that before, it doesn't work, and so on. Now, a lot of things obviously do change fast in the auto industry while some other things stay the same. But where do you see the auto industry in 5 years now, in 10 years, especially since we do have more EVs on the market? Cars are more complicated to work on than perhaps they have ever been.
Yeah, I think over the next 5 years, you will see a lot more EVs on the road with the infrastructure bill that the Biden administration passed. You're going to see quite a bit of those superchargers and chargers in general across the country um, being built. I think over the next 5 to 10 years, I think Tesla will break ground in what they hope to achieve, which is allowing the self-driving vehicles. If you're a vehicle owner yourself, specifically Tesla, you can drive to work and then launch your vehicle to go and work for you in a nutshell, and then pick you up when it's time to go home. So in that way, you have a business of your own, and I think that fleet of having Teslas is going to grow exponentially, which will then reflect the subscription based model for self-driving vehicles. So I believe that somewhere along the lines of, for example, $400, you get X amount of miles, and you can hail down a vehicle at your discretion and takes you wherever you need to go. But that also is fine and dandy and all good. But remember, people want their independence. People want to have their own flexibility of just jumping in their car and driving to work or to the yoga studio and having their yoga mat in the back, or their basketball and, or baseball bat, whatever it may be, whatever sport they're into. They want to have the flexibility of having their own vehicles. So I believe that subscription model is definitely coming, but I think it's going to have an impact in the coasts, big cities specifically, where there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of congestion. But in the rural parts of America, I think it's more the Wild West at this point, because at the end of the day, people want to have their own vehicles.
Right. I agree with that one for sure, because I think, and I've been in a lot more rural parts of the state where I'm in here in Colorado, and I've seen a lot more hesitance when it comes to, not just electric cars, but newer cars in general. A lot of folks in those demographics, they want to buy a car, they want to keep it for 10, but maybe 15 years, and they want to keep it around. And I think your app can definitely play a role into doing so, but also perhaps even finding some more of the more specific parts. So when you do have these modern cars, they have a lot more specific needs when it comes to maintenance. They may not need maintenance as often, but when they do, a lot of times you're going to need something specific. And is that a role that your app can fill?
Absolutely. The larger the automotive industry goes, the larger the catalog grows. So as it continues to grow on a daily basis, our catalogs continue to grow as well, giving the user an opportunity to work on just about anything. And as we continue to evolve as a company, we want to expand on the catalogs as well. So for those specialty vehicles that are just hard to come by, we would really want to expand our catalogs to work with other suppliers that have a smaller presence, for example, but have the parts that somebody on the other side of the country might need. So as we continue to grow, our catalogs will grow as well.
Awesome. Yeah. And speaking of growth, where do you see the app going? What are some goals that you have with it, stuff that you want to put in the future?
Yeah, as there's so many moving parts, and I think that every industry can benefit from software. Specifically speaking, we want to go into the heavy duty, light duty vehicles, and tractor trailers for farming equipment, motorcycles as well, ATVs, boats, anything that has components, moving parts, anything that has SKU numbers. And with AI, I think that we'll have a great opportunity to bring value for people that are working on their own vehicles, on their boats, ATVs, tractor trailers, specifically for farmers, and those heavy duty haulers that go across the country.
Fantastic. I think it's going to be really cool. It's going to be really exciting to also just follow along and kind of see where you grow with this and what other industries you can break into with it, obviously. And also, like I said, I downloaded it. So next time I'm looking for a ignition coil for my S2000, I'm probably going to start there, because it's it's nice being able to find something quick. That's really handy. One thing that I find frustrating is, looking between different parts, websites, you're talking about those SKU numbers. A lot of times I'll look up one of the SKUs, I'll pull it, I'll copy it, and I'll paste it into, Amazon. I'll see, well, can I get it cheaper there? Or these guys are asking, $200 for an ignition coil. Can I get it here? Well, is that going to be OEM? I think, the power of what you have too is it's not just an app, but it's that whole back end. It's that direct to consumer model where you can find that stuff. It's easy to find. It's at a good price. It's at probably the best price. When I was scrolling through there, I saw some really competitive prices compared to even what I'm used to paying for some stuff. And I could be kind of, for me, stingy with parts. I go to wherever I can to find them as cheap as I can sometimes. And, that has occasionally gone to bite me a little bit. But I think what you have is really powerful.
That's fantastic. Yeah, and on average, I think when we did the comps, anywhere from 20 to 35% less. Now, don't quote me on that, but that's kind of what I've seen over the past couple of weeks that I've monitored the transactions that are going through. And it's great to see more and more people downloading and adding their vehicles. And you can add multiple vehicles and kind of have a garage for yourself so you can go back and forth between multiple vehicles. And again, our goal is to make this as customer friendly as possible. So every week or so, every couple of weeks, we're launching new features. We have quite the list of features that we want to that we're working on, but we're relatively a small team, and we wanted to get it out there just so people can start using it, giving us some sort of feedback, and just to grow with us as well. Because again, we're here to work alongside our users and provide any feedback. I'm always checking my emails, and you can send me an email directly from our website.
That's fantastic. Again, I really love what you're doing. Again, my guest is Stan Mirzayev, founder and CEO of the Parts Pass app. You can download the app on the App Store. And again, you can also follow Stan. Give him a follow on Instagram, Stan_founder. Stan, I really want to thank you for joining me on the Automotive ADHD show. Really a pleasure having you.
Absolutely. Thanks for the time, Matt. And you've done an incredible job. Thank you for allowing me to tap into your network.